Everyone assumes the same thing when they hear you're spending Christmas alone. They picture sadness first, a quiet apartment, cold takeout, you scrolling past photos of families around glowing trees, feeling left behind by a world that moved on without you. They imagine loneliness. What they don't imagine is relief. They don't imagine what it's like to wake up on December 25th without a knot in your chest, without rehearsing answers, without bracing for comments disguised as concern, without calculating how long you have to stay before it's socially acceptable to leave. Because the truth is, the loneliest Christmases of your life didn't happen when you were alone. They happened when you showed up. They happened sitting at a table surrounded by people who knew your history but not your inner world. Smiling on cue, performing gratitude, laughing at jokes that never quite landed, managing the emotional temperature of the room while quietly disappearing inside yourself. That kind of loneliness is invisible from the outside. It looks like participation, it looks like family, it looks like tradition, but inside it feels like absence. So when people pity you for being alone this Christmas, they're missing the point. What looks like isolation from the outside may be the first time in years your nervous system isn't under threat. The first time you don't have to become smaller to belong. This isn't the story of someone who failed to connect. It's the story of someone who finally stopped confusing presence with being seen. It didn't start in adulthood. Your relationship with Christmas was shaped long before you had words for it. Maybe you were 8 years old, sitting at the table while the adults laughed about something that didn't include you. You had a story you wanted to tell, something small but important in the way only children's excitement ever is. You opened your mouth and someone talked over you, then someone else. Eventually, you stopped trying. Fork in hand, eyes down, learning something quietly. Even here, even today, your voice wasn't necessary. Or maybe you were 12, unwrapping a gift that could have belonged to anyone. Generic, thoughtless, not cruel, just revealing. You smiled anyway. You said thank you anyway. Because making them uncomfortable by noticing you felt worse than pretending you were grateful. Your body noticed all of it. Long before your mind could explain what was happening, your nervous system was learning a pattern. Holidays aren't a place to be expressive. They're a place to be careful, to stay pleasant, to stay small. So you adapted. You became quieter, more agreeable, less disruptive to the moment everyone else seemed to be enjoying. That was the first Christmas your nervous system learned to stay silent. Not because you had nothing to say, but because speaking didn't feel safe. Over time, Christmas stopped being something you experienced. It became something you managed. There was an unspoken script you learned to follow. Show up on time, smile at the right moments, express gratitude in the correct tone. Don't bring the wrong mood into the room. Don't ask for too much. Don't make things complicated. This is what happens when celebration is built on emotional neglect rather than connection. Your presence is welcomed, but only the parts of you that are easy to accommodate. The curious parts, the uncertain parts, the painful parts, those stay off stage, so you learn to perform belonging instead of feeling it. You became fluent in reading the room. You knew when to laugh, when to nod, when to redirect the conversation. You shared the safe updates about your life, the edited version that didn't invite real questions or require anyone to sit with your reality. Not because you were dishonest, but because honesty had never been held well there. Performance feels like connection from the outside. It looks warm, it looks functional, it even looks loving, but internally it creates a quiet split. One part of you is present at the table, another part is watching, monitoring, staying alert, and over time, your body starts to understand something your mind keeps trying to override. Connection that requires self-erasure isn't connection at all. Christmas became a place where your needs were inconvenient, your emotions were excessive, and your job was to make the moment easier for everyone else. You weren't celebrated. You were tolerated as long as you stayed in character. That's not celebration. That's survival dressed up as tradition. At some point, you stopped being just a child at Christmas. You became a role. You learned to read the room the moment you walked in. Who was already tense? Who had been drinking? Who was likely to start an argument if the wrong topic came up? Your body adjusted before your coat even came off. Shoulders tight, breath shallow, attention split in every direction. This is what happens when a child grows up in an emotionally unpredictable system. Someone has to stabilize it, and quietly, without anyone asking, that someone became you. You learned how to soften your tone when voices rose, how to change the subject before a disagreement turned into a fight, how to make jokes to diffuse tension that wasn't yours to carry. You absorbed emotions that had nowhere else to go because doing so kept the room intact. Psychologically, this is known as parentification, the child taking on emotional responsibilities meant for adults. But it never feels like a concept when you're inside it. It just feels like being the reasonable one, the mature one, the easy one. Christmas amplified this role. While everyone else relaxed into tradition, you stayed alert. You monitored reactions, you managed moods, you protected younger siblings from the fallout. You kept the holiday from collapsing, even as your own needs disappeared entirely. And the cost was subtle but profound. You learned that peace mattered more than authenticity. That harmony required your silence. That your value came from how well you could hold everyone else together. By the end of the day, you weren't exhausted from celebrating. You were exhausted from regulating a system that never learned to regulate itself. Long before you decided not to go home for Christmas, your body had already made the decision. You could feel it in the days leading up to the holiday, the tightness in your stomach that appeared for no clear reason, the way your jaws stayed clenched even in sleep, the headaches that arrived without warning, the restless nights where your mind replayed conversations that hadn't happened yet. You told yourself it was stress, travel, expectations, normal holiday anxiety. But your nervous system knew better. Your body remembers what your mind tries to rationalize away. It remembers years of scanning the room for emotional shifts, of monitoring tone, posture, facial expressions, of bracing for judgment disguised as concern, of preparing to manage emotions that were never yours to carry. This is hypervigilance, a state where the nervous system stays on constant alert, not because danger is obvious, but because it has learned that harm comes quietly. Through criticism, through dismissal, through being misunderstood in ways that slowly erode your sense of self. Christmas activated this response because it required you to return to the same emotional environment year after year. Even when nothing overtly bad happened, your body stayed braced. Relaxing meant missing the signs. Missing the signs meant being blindsided. So your system stayed ready. This isn't weakness. And it isn't ingratitude, it's conditioning. When your body reacts before your conscious mind does, it's not betraying you, it's protecting you, using patterns learned long before you had language for them. And that's why the dread showed up in your body first. When you finally stopped showing up, it didn't feel like a decision. It felt like exhaustion reaching its limit. From the outside, it looks like abandonment, like rejection, like you turned your back on family, tradition, obligation. That's the story people tell because it's simpler than the truth. The truth is quieter. You didn't leave because you stopped caring. You left because staying required you to keep disappearing. Every Christmas asked the same price: silence, compliance, emotional labor, self-erasure, and eventually, your nervous system refused to keep paying it. There's an important difference between cutting people off and setting a boundary. Cut off is about punishment. Boundary is about protection. One is fueled by anger. The other is fueled by clarity. Choosing distance doesn't mean you hate your family. It means you finally listened to what your body had been communicating for years. That this environment, however familiar, wasn't emotionally safe for you. Boundaries aren't walls designed to keep people out forever. They're lines that say, this is as close as I can be without losing myself. And sometimes, the healthiest boundary isn't a conversation or a compromise, it's absence. You didn't stop loving them. You stopped sacrificing yourself to maintain an image of harmony that only existed because you carried it alone. That choice takes courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that chooses self-respect over tradition and protection over performance. When you stopped showing up the way you always had, people noticed. Of course they did. You've changed. You're so distant now. You used to be more present. It rarely sounds like concern. It sounds like accusation. In family systems, change is disruptive, not because it's wrong, but because every system relies on roles staying predictable. When you were the peacekeeper, the emotional buffer, the one who absorbed tension, the system stayed balanced, unhealthy but stable. So when you step out of that role, the imbalance becomes visible. This isn't about blame, it's about mechanics. When one person stops compensating, everyone else feels the weight they were never meant to carry. And instead of asking why that role existed, the system often pushes back against the person who broke the pattern. That's why your growth gets reframed as coldness, why your boundaries get labelled selfishness, why your absence feels threatening. Not because you've done something cruel, but because your change forces a reckoning the system isn't ready for. Most families don't ask what happened to you. They ask, why aren't you making this easier for us anymore? And that distinction matters. Your evolution isn't a personal attack. It's a shift in equilibrium. You didn't become difficult, you became honest. And honesty destabilizes systems built on unspoken agreements and emotional silence. The pushback isn't proof you're wrong, it's proof that the role you left behind was holding more than anyone ever acknowledged. There's a difference no one really teaches you how to name. The difference between being alone and being unseen. When you're physically alone on Christmas, the quiet is obvious, the room is still, the hours move slowly. There's no one to distract you from the fact that you're by yourself. That kind of loneliness is honest. It doesn't pretend to be anything else, but dishonest togetherness is harder to recognize. It's sitting at a table surrounded by people and feeling like a ghost. It's answering questions you know won't be followed by real listening. It's sharing space without sharing yourself. It's performing connection while feeling fundamentally alone. That kind of loneliness is disorienting because everything looks right from the outside. You're included, you're invited, you're present, and yet something essential is missing. Not proximity, but attunement. Your nervous system knows the difference. In dishonest togetherness, your body stays alert. Your shoulders don't drop. Your breath doesn't deepen. You're braced, waiting for the next comment, the next shift in tone, the next moment you'll need to adjust yourself to keep the peace. In honest solitude, something else happens. Your system gets a break. There's no one to manage, no cues to monitor, no performance to maintain. The quiet might feel unfamiliar at first, even unsettling, but underneath it is relief. You're not being abandoned in solitude. You're being allowed to exist without distortion. And that kind of honesty, even when it comes with loneliness, is less damaging than togetherness that requires you to disappear. There's a part of this story that rarely gets told because it doesn't fit a clean narrative. It's not the dramatic break, and it's not the healed ending either. It's the in-between. You're no longer forcing yourself into family spaces that cost you your sense of self. But you're not surrounded by a chosen family yet. There's no warm substitute waiting to replace what you stepped away from. No instant belonging, just space. This is the part people rush through. They want to turn solitude into a success story, to promise that if you choose yourself, connection will immediately follow. But psychologically, that's not how it works. This space exists for a reason. When you've spent years performing to belong, your nervous system needs time to unlearn that pattern. Time to experience what it's like to wake up without bracing, to sit in quiet without scanning, to notice your own preferences without adjusting them to someone else's comfort. At first, this can feel unsettling. The absence of pressure feels like something is missing. You might mistake relief for emptiness. You might wonder if you made the wrong choice because there's no one there to validate it. But this isn't avoidance, and it isn't failure, it's recalibration. You're learning who you are when no one is asking you to manage the room. You're discovering what your body feels like without constant vigilance. You're giving yourself the space to recognize what real safety even feels like, something you were never taught inside your family system. This in-between isn't meant to be permanent, but it is meant to be honored. It's the quiet ground where discernment grows, where you begin to understand what kind of connection nourishes you and what kind only drains you. Nothing flashy happens here, but something essential does. You stop reaching for connection out of fear, and that changes everything about what you'll accept next. This is the part of the story most people misunderstand. They think spending Christmas alone is the sad ending, the moment where connection failed, where family fractured, where something went wrong. But this isn't an ending. It's the first time you stopped lying to yourself. For years, Christmas asked you to override your instincts, to ignore the tension in your body, to minimize the quiet hurt of being unseen, to perform gratitude for people who never learned how to meet you emotionally. Every time you showed up, you lost a little more trust in yourself. This year, that stopped. You woke up without dread, without rehearsing answers, without preparing to manage everyone else's emotions except your own. You didn't have to become smaller to belong. You didn't have to disappear to keep the peace. That's not loneliness, that's integrity. Choosing yourself didn't make you cold. It made you clear. It didn't close your heart, it protected it. You're not rejecting connection. You're refusing to accept a version of it that requires self-betrayal. Some people will never understand this choice. They'll call it selfish, dramatic, unforgiving. Let them. They don't know what it cost you to keep showing up. They don't know how much effort you put in before you finally stopped. This Christmas isn't about giving up on family. It's about honoring the part of you that still believes real connection is possible. The kind where you don't have to perform, the kind where your presence is enough. If this story felt familiar, if you recognized yourself somewhere in this quiet, you're not alone here. This channel exists for people who've lived through the invisible parts of family and identity. Consider subscribing if you want more conversations like this. And if you're comfortable, leave a comment below. Your experience might be the clarity someone else needs to feel less alone this Christmas.